Your heart is racing, your palms are sweating, every cell in your body is screaming that danger's near. But when you look around, nothing is there. Just you, just this moment, just the phantom of a future that hasn't happened yet. If fear is just a thought, just a story your mind tells, why does it grip you like iron? Why does it live in your chest, coil in your stomach, steal your breath? Krishnamurti said something that sounds almost cruel in its simplicity. Fear is the result of thought. But stand in that statement for a moment. If it's true, if fear is born from thinking, then why can't you simply think it away? This is the paradox that keeps us circling in the dark. We read the spiritual books. We understand intellectually that fear is created by the mind's projection into an imagined future. We know this. And yet, at 3 a.m., when anxiety wraps around our throat, all that knowledge feels like dust. The question isn't whether fear is an illusion. The question is, why does the illusion have such power? Today, we're not here to convince you that fear isn't real. We're here to explore something far more intimate, the actual mechanism of how thought creates the very monster it then tries to escape. And in that seeing, in that direct observation, something you never expected becomes possible. By the end of this reflection, you may discover that what you've been fighting all along was never separate from you at all. Krishnamurti spent his life dismantling the structures we use to avoid direct perception. And fear, he saw, is perhaps our most elaborate construction. Not because fear itself is complex, but because we've built entire identities around managing it, controlling it, denying it. He observed, we carry fear from day to day, from year to year, cultivating it in the darkness of our minds. Think about how you relate to fear. You wake up with anxiety about a meeting. Your mind immediately begins its familiar routine. It analyzes, it strategizes, it replays past failures, it rehearses future conversations, and beneath all this mental activity, the fear grows stronger, not weaker. Why? Because thought, in its very attempt to resolve fear, is feeding it. This is the trap. The mind that creates fear is the same mind trying to eliminate it. It's like using fire to fight fire. The battle itself becomes the fuel. Watch this mechanism in yourself. A fearful thought arises. What if I fail? Immediately, the thinker appears. The I, who is afraid. This I feels separate from the fear, as if fear is something happening to it. And from this division, an entire drama unfolds. The I begins to fight. It seeks solutions. It builds defenses. It creates more thoughts about the fear, strategies around the fear, entire philosophies about conquering fear. But Krishnamurti asks us to look more closely. Is there actually an I separate from the fear? Or is that division itself the illusion? The observer is the observed, he said. The thinker is the thought. Let me say that again, because everything turns on this. The observer is the observed. You are not someone who has fear. In the moment of fear, you are the fear, the one trying to control it, escape it, understand it. That's not separate from the fear. That is fear, wearing the mask of the controller. The war against fear is just fear fighting itself. Stop. Everything you've been told about overcoming fear, every book, every technique, every spiritual practice, was built on a lie. Not because the methods don't work, but because there was never anyone there to overcome anything. The one who wants to be fearless is the fear. Let that land. This is where we must be brutally honest with ourselves. The reason fear feels so real is because we are constantly giving it reality through the act of separation. The moment we say, "I am afraid," we've created a subject and an object, a me and a fear. And now the war begins. The war is what makes it real, not the fear itself, but the relationship we have with it, the resistance, the judgment, the desperate attempt to make it go away. Fear breathes when there is resistance. It lives on the oxygen of division. This is why all our strategies fail. Positive thinking tries to replace fearful thoughts with optimistic ones, but it's still fighting thought. Meditation techniques that aim to overcome fear are still rooted in the division between the meditator and what must be overcome. Even spiritual practices can become elaborate methods of avoidance, new ways for thought to maintain control by creating the illusion of progress. Krishnamurti wasn't interested in progress. He was interested in freedom. And freedom, he insisted, doesn't come through time, through gradual improvement. It comes through immediate insight. What if the very structure of you working on your fear is the problem? What if there's no one there to fix? When fear arises, where is the boundary between you and the fear? Can you find a line that separates the one who is afraid from the fear itself? Or is there simply fear, a movement of energy, a constellation of sensations, thoughts, contractions, with no separate entity experiencing it? Look now, not tomorrow, not after you prepare yourself. Right now, in this actual moment, where is the fear? Not in the story about tomorrow's presentation or last year's betrayal, but here, in the pure present, stripped of narrative. The past is memory. The future is imagination. Both are thought. Both are where fear lives. Here now, there is only what is. But let's be clear, this doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent to real danger. Krishnamurti distinguished between psychological fear and intelligent response to actual threat. If you're crossing the street and a car is speeding toward you, your body will move. That's not fear. That's intelligence. That's the organism protecting itself without thought, without the psychological weight of, I might die. Psychological fear is different. It's the weight you carry, the fear of what people think, the fear of being alone, the fear of death that colors every moment, making you grasp at security, at certainty, at control. This is the fear that makes you small, that builds walls around your heart, that keeps you repeating the same patterns, choosing the familiar suffering over the unknown freedom. And this fear exists only in thought. A wave rises from the ocean. It crashes. It dissolves back into the sea. Was the wave ever separate from the ocean? Fear is the wave. You are the ocean. The wave was never the problem. The belief that you are the wave is. Krishnamurti invites us to a kind of seeing that has no agenda. He calls it choiceless awareness, not a technique, not a method, but a quality of attention that simply observes without the observer. What does that mean? When you observe fear with an agenda, to get rid of it, to understand it, to control it, there is division. There is the observer, you, and the observed, fear. And in that division, conflict continues. But what happens when observation occurs without the one who observes? When there's no I trying to change what is, no commentary, no judgment, no naming, no effort to push away or hold on, what remains is simply the movement itself, the sensation, the thought, the energy, all of it appearing and disappearing in awareness, none of it requiring a separate you to manage it. In this seeing, the structure that gave fear, its power collapses, not because you did something right, but because the illusion of separation dissolved in the light of attention. When there's no one holding the fear, it simply falls away. Freedom from fear is not through the action of will, Krishnamurti said. It comes only when you observe fear without trying to change it, without condemning it or running away from it. This is the revolution he speaks of. Not a revolution in time, but a revolution in perception, a complete shift from the fragmented consciousness that creates problems to the wholeness that dissolves them. When you stop fighting fear, when you stop trying to become someone who is fearless, the energy that was trapped in conflict becomes available. The mind that was constantly strategizing becomes quiet. And in that quietness, there is an intelligence that doesn't come from accumulated knowledge or past experience. An intelligence that is fresh, responsive, alive. This intelligence meets each moment without the burden of fear, without the weight of a separate self trying to protect its existence. This is what it means to live without fear, not to eliminate every fearful thought, but to no longer be enslaved by the psychological structure that creates and sustains it. In silence, fear loses the ground it stands on. You've been asking the wrong question. The question isn't, how do I stop being afraid? The question is, who is afraid? And when you look, really look without thought rushing in to answer, you find nothing, no one, just fear, appearing and disappearing like breath. The terror you've been running from your entire life was never chasing you, because there was no you separate from it to chase. What haunts us? Why does fear feel so real? Has its answer in the asking. It feels real because you keep making it real through division, through struggle, through the belief that there is a you separate from the fear. But in the actual looking, in the direct observation Krishnamurti points to, that boundary disappears. What remains is life itself, flowing, moving, sometimes turbulent, sometimes peaceful, but no longer interpreted through the lens of a frightened self trying to protect its existence. Are you willing to look? Not tomorrow, not after you've prepared yourself, but now? The illusion doesn't need time to dissolve. It only needs light. If you felt something shift as you watch this, even for a moment, that shift is not just yours. It's part of a quiet revolution happening in consciousness itself. When you stay with us, when you let these reflections become part of your inner landscape, you're not consuming content. You're participating in the dissolution of fear, not just for yourself, but for everyone this reaches. Each video on this channel is an invitation to see clearly, to question the structures that bind us, to live from unconditional awareness rather than conditioned reaction. If something in this touched you, stay with us. Let these reflections accompany you in your own seeing. And here's a question to sit with. not to answer, but to feel. What is the fear you've carried the longest? Share below if it moves you, not for confession, but for witnessing. Sometimes, naming dissolves what silence kept alive. Watch another reflection. Let this seeing deepen. Let the space between thoughts reveal what words can only point toward. The fear you've been running from was never chasing you. It was you running. Now, rest.